right, what's going on, everybody? Christopher Inks from TexasWest Capital. We got Andrew and kind of have Tillman here from Arch Public.
I have to text somebody something important, so I'll be on in a second visually.
Anyway, hey, good to see you all checking in. Hopefully, y'all have had a great week. There's been a bit of a pullback. Hopefully, it hasn't caught people off, by surprise. I know I was talking to it with our students on Friday of last week. About this pullback, and then at the beginning of this week about potentially that pullback continuing toward the end of this week. Today being Wednesday, as everybody's kind of de-risking into the symposium there in Wyoming in Jackson Hole. And so to that, I just wanted to say real quick here, I think there's more to it than that. The TGA, which is the Treasury General account in the government, which is what they use basically the checkbook to pay the federal employees and everything. It draws down and then it builds up back and forth, right? And so right now we've had a huge buildup from like 300 to 500 million in the last month or so. And what happens is when you build up that TGA account, it sucks money out of the economy and out of the markets. And so I think that's probably, before anybody asks here, I think that's probably the biggest driver, the main driver of what's going on with Bitcoin right now. And the other markets as well. But also, we do want to talk today. I know Tillman especially wanted to talk today about the symposium there in Wyoming. And, I believe that's the other part of it. Again, it's de-risking, folks. You're coming into a big news event. And again, news events don't determine trend. Trend's already determined. News events will give you knee-jerk reactions that'll last differing periods of time. But basically, they're just knee-jerk reactions within the trend. But that is coming up. Powell will be speaking. I believe it's on Friday, right, guys? Like 10 a.m. Eastern?
I think so. I don't know, confirmed yet. But the symposium is interesting to me because of specifically the stablecoin that was released or launched by the state of Wyoming. I don't know if you guys caught that, but a state-issued stablecoin sounds like, blockchain's here to stay. They've been testing it for a long time. It's going to be launched on a ton of different blockchains. Avalanche is the one that I've been kind of doing my due diligence on, talking about issuing their tax refunds on it, talking about paying all of their government contractors in it. I think this is a massive deal. I mean, you talk about Wall Street. This is, to me, the first real piece of news that shows bank integration. And you talk about the ETFs being that for kind of Wall Street. Well, yeah. This is banks saying, not only are we going to participate, but we are going to be the central hub of this. We're going to issue our own coin. And as a state entity, I would think that one would assume that more will do this, right? And if it's a successful endeavor, why wouldn't that trickle up to the federal government at some point? So I think this is one of the cats out of the bag type moments, because I'm familiar enough with the technology to know the outcome. It's going to be a tremendous improvement in efficiency, human waste in terms of capital, man hours, errors and omissions, like just cost. It's going to alleviate a ton of that. And there's going to be a massive delta in, in accuracy, in all of the performance metrics that you want to put on any of those departments as it pertains to issuing payments and receiving payments. And, this is monumental, and it's going to give a better outcome for the participants of the state. So if you're a person who's waiting 6 weeks for your tax refund and you talk to your neighbor and the neighbor's like, yeah, no, I got it last night when I filed. And they're like, what do you mean you got it last night when you filed? Yeah, I got it paid out in a stable coin that also works with my bank here. I mean, to me, again, the cat's out of the bag. Consumers are going to adopt this because by very nature, the person who, they've adopted as their financial hub is adopting it, which is the banks. That to me is huge news, massive news.
So would you think that that people, should be careful? I mean, let's do this. We know that government historically throughout all period of history has never really given back power, right? It continues to take on more power, right? Every little inch it pushes in, it grabs for another foot more, right? And with stable coins being what they are and tracking being easy, I mean, maybe
Well,
not.
I think it's one of those free market equations that has to get fleshed out over time. I think trust will be built with some brands and they'll be broken with other brands. And the blockchain is going to be real easy to do those investigative works. And so, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. They're just going to have a mass exodus, no different than Andrew brought this up yesterday on Scott's show. The mass exodus of business licenses that used to get filed in Delaware versus now being filed in Delaware. That percentage has dropped drastically. And why? Well, because there's been some funny business that's gone on in Delaware as it pertains to business case law. And there's not so much funny business going on in Wyoming. And that's why most of that business that's been moved has found its way to Wyoming or Nevada or some of the states that lend themselves to more freedom, more flexibility, less regulations, like all of the things. So free markets, as long as there's one place that is looking at treating the citizens in a fair and equitable manner, that will be the central hub of wealth, because you're going to get to essentially vote with your dollar. And that's good. The rules will be established based upon free market conditions, and that's what we want.
Well, I guess at least as long as far as government allows free markets to go, right?
Well, think about it. By definition, if every state has a coin, you've created so much competitive landscape there that there is competition, and that competition lends to choice, right? So the only time you have to really worry about the government is if they give you one choice, or the illusion of choice by giving you two choices, but both of them are from them and both of them equally stink. That's when you got to worry. But, having Wyoming issue their own stable coin, I mean, who is Wyoming? If Wyoming can do it, I think
Caitlin Long is what it is. Wyoming is Caitlin Long, right?
It's interesting. I hadn't seen her attach herself to this story yet. I was wondering the same thing, but I don't know if it is her or not, because I haven't seen her, tweet about it or promote it as something that she's been involved in. Maybe I missed it, but
if anything, it's her and the outspokenness she's had over the last few years and the things that she's pushed. I mean, we could at least say that, right? Even if she's not directly, she's
the queen of this movement, and yes, by definition, she's involved. But I'm just saying directly, I don't know if this is, something she's been grinding the axe on. But I just think it's unbelievably powerful, because what it means is now the state of Wyoming can settle instantly, and that case study is something that everyone will have to take notice of over time. No different than Bitcoin's case study. Why are we here talking about it? Because everyone has to eventually take notice of it. It has intrinsic value and capabilities and functionality that's so radically better than what we're currently using that it doesn't take a genius, it just takes exposure, right? And so that adoption curve has been very, very steady and predictable over a 16-year period. The adoption curve of Bitcoin is remarkably steady. Why? Because it doesn't take a genius, it doesn't take someone special. The demographic of people that it appeals to is everyone. That's the only way you get that type of a steady adoption curve, right?
Yeah. So we've got the big news, obviously, this week, probably even this month, is we've got the symposium there, where we have all these economic leaders from the world showing up there in Jackson Hole, which, by the way, if you haven't been, is an absolutely gorgeous place. Right there at the bottom of the Tetons. But what do you guys think? I mean, we've got this coming up here. I know we had until just recently. Well, I guess it's still pretty strong. The market believes we're going to get that first rate cut next month. But we did have this huge PPI came in really hot, right? A lot hotter than expected. And that kind of nullified the mixed CPI that came out. And, I don't know. When we're looking at it, I kind of tweeted about this not too long ago. The Fed's got that dual mandate of unemployment and prices, which is basically inflation. I still see inflation as the leading thing, right? And unemployment, even though we had a slight tick up, it's 4.2%. I mean, that's historically low. The Fed generally, reads about 5% as a fully employed country. So I think
all of these macro things that you're talking about, I think get swallowed up in the printing press. I don't think they're relevant in the long. So all of those things you're talking about are long-term indicators, right?
Mhm.
And so is the M2 money supply, and that trumps all of those. So we know what ultimately wins the long term, which is what you said, inflation. Like we're going to keep printing, right? So I don't think you don't even have to think about that. That's just throw the money into the investment pot, the 401k, and wait 30 years. It's going to be higher. I think, the more interesting thing to me that's come out of the symposium, and honestly, oh man, I have so much beef with Ripple based upon the lawsuit and all the stuff that came out. It's hard for me to even say this, but I'm most impressed with them of any group that, what I see happening right now in the crypto space is very similar to what happened in the streaming media space. It was like a handful of companies that were juggernauts that were all competing for market share, and they were doing it through M&A, right? And that's what the game was. And Ripple has done an unbelievable job of spending the money that they have accumulated over I don't know how long they've been around, but 10 years plus. And that money is potent. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean, they're offering a credit facility to Gemini of 75 million. I think it's 150 and under some, it's 75 million and then predicated on something else, another 75 million. Well, what does that mean? It's equally as important as what we were just talking about from a bank adoption perspective and from a state, entity adoption perspective, because and Andrew's talked about this all the time, how IPOs are dead. Like no one talks about IPOs anymore. Yet when we were, in college, that was how everyone was betting the big bucks. That's how you made the big bucks, was you got insider info from one of your brokerage buddies and or from your money manager as to an exclusive IPO that they might be able to allocate a few shares to you. You consider yourself lucky if that's how the game has been played for a really, really long time. Restricted access, artificial demand based upon a few players controlling supply and the few players having a good enough brand themselves and enough liquidity to essentially make the market. And that's how it's been played for like a long, long time. Well, I would argue that this deal with Ripple and Gemini is the first ever tokenized IPO, which we used to say were ICOs, but this is the real deal. This is the merger of the ICO and the IPO, which is credit facilities that are built on stable coins, no different than what we just saw. Bullish just took, again, Ripple in these massive marker headlines just took $1 billion+ of their IPO money in Ripple's stablecoin. So what is this? What is Ripple doing? They're creating a new way to go public, and they're creating it with a deeper liquidity pool than the current IPO market is, which is now this crypto ICO IPO hybrid. And I think when you have that domino effect take place and you start seeing every major security being turned into a digital asset and now finding its way onto these hybrid exchanges where you can trade pretty much any instrument anytime, 24/7, 365, instantly settled, blah blah blah. I think I don't think we're that far off from that, and I think Ripple's doing a hell of a job of accumulating market share on that front. I think it's unbelievable actually what they're doing. Hidden Road acquisition, market exchange, that they're going for their banking license. I don't know if they've been given it yet or not. The stable coin creation and what they've now done in terms of issuing stable coin value to the IPOs that have launched and being the issuing bank. Andrew, you know this 10 times better than me, so let me shut up for a second. Who was the kings of taking companies public? Who owned that market before?
I mean, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, they still own it, right? So Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Citigroup, and Morgan Stanley are the lead underwriters for Gemini's IPO. They were probably the lead underwriters for Bullish's IPO, probably the lead underwriters for Circle. All you have to do is go look up the S1 for all three of those. They're all three out now. The last two have gone public. Gemini's about to go public. So it hasn't changed. I mean, it's been the same associated with large.
So why aren't they offering the credit facility? Like, what is Ripple in competition with them now? Or is this an additive cherry on the sundae? Or how do you see them fitting into this equation?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I haven't looked into it closely enough, but it's a good question as to why Gemini would tap a credit facility associated with Ripple as opposed to associating it with, again, a JP Morgan or a Goldman. My best guess is that it's cheaper to tap that facility versus TradFi organizations, and there's mutual benefit associated with Gemini and Ripple that is, a plus short and long term versus versus tapping a facility at Goldman.
What do you think, Goldman and them? Do you think this is a piece of the pie that they ultimately will want to get back, or do you think that, is this something that threatens their incentive as it relates to doing this, or is this really not the primary? This is the tail, not the dog.
One has to wonder why they have needed a credit facility in the first place. I think, again, I'll just tell the audience to go look at the S1 that Gemini filed, and you'll get a good idea why they needed the credit facility. They need the cash, they need the capital to get themselves to the IPO. And then when that equity and all that capital hits their books, they're in a good spot. So there's that. But the question as to why Ripple versus others that could provide the same type, it's not a huge amount of capital, $75 million.
That's what I mean. For an IPO, you're kind of going,
100. Even if they tap the whole deal, $150 million it's just not that much money. It's just not that much money in the world of TradFi / IPOs. It's not that. Gemini expects their IPO to, price at, let's call it $5 billion and trade up to $10 billion kind of right off the bat. Bullish was in that same. Gemini has a much, much higher profile than Bullish
much bigger,
did. I hadn't even heard of Bullish until about 6 months ago. And the only reason I heard about it is because it's loosely backed by Peter Thiel. That's the only reason I've heard about it.
I mean, but think about it, man. They just pulled $1 billion off the table.
Yeah. And so Gemini is very, very well known in the crypto space, for sure. But all of these IPOs are going to be successful short term, but then there's a question of the long term, right? Do they make money? How much money do they make? What is their velocity rate associated with capturing customers, capturing assets, and generating revenue based on those first two things, right? And you got to show movement quarter by quarter by quarter. So it's cool to create $15 billion in value via an IPO, but 6 months after that IPO, and you've now had to, perform on conference calls, quarterly conference calls for Q whatever, and then Q whatever in the first 6 months. There's two quarterly conference calls inside of that 6 months. So what does your growth curve look like, right? You can talk a good game all you want associated with macro and crypto and growth and excitement, but then, what was your growth rate? And then what is your growth rate versus some of your competitors? Because your competitors have IPO too. Coinbase is IPO. Bullish is now IPO. There's going to be others. So what does that look like? Because as an exchange, you have limited metrics to generate significant revenue, right? Monthly transactional users. Well, that particular acronym says, how many people are we bringing onto the platform? how much capital are they depositing, and are they actually using our platform for something somewhere on a monthly basis? And we'll see where it all shakes out. We'll see what the high end and low end associated with these companies in terms of what they're worth. And because listen, Coinbase IPO'd at $400 at the top in their first couple days, and then they went all the way down to I don't know, $40 or $30 or whatever it was, and now they're back up to 300 as we sit here today. So in a lot of ways, they're just it's the beginning of the beginning.
Yeah.
IPO, it's the beginning. It's the real deal now, right?
Yeah.
And that's why for so long, for the better part of 15 years, the IPO market died, because they're like, well, wait a minute. If you're a business that's doing a lot of business, generating a lot of revenue, what's the point of going public? That just adds several layers of just to the whole process. Why don't you just stay private? You can raise more money, which is almost like an IPO anyways, and just keep doing the business the way you want to do it without.
Well, one would have to assume the only reason why you would want to do that is to raise debt capital for the form, to do some sort of treasury company play, like public entities that have Bitcoin in their holdings. Like, it'd be really interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, I turned him off. He had taken too much time on the show today. The first 17 minutes was a Tillman Maximalist show. So
did you guys kick me out? That was really
I
weird.
kicked you out. Yeah,
listen.
That's what happened. I saw that Fibo said that this is a fiat show now. No, Fibo, we're talking about crypto IPOs, you bonehead.
What I was going to add in before y'all just kicked me off the show was, there's just this whole thing begs a lot of questions to me, because Tyler and Cameron are big enough to be a bank. They are on the in the top 10, I would think, in terms of holdings, U.S. holdings, and I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. I'm surprised by the way it's already playing out. But I do think the moral of the story that I was trying to tell is that Ripple is doing all the right things, in my opinion. And that's hard for me to say, because I wasn't too impressed with the things they were doing over the last 10 years. But now, with the $1 billion+ acquisition here and a $1 billion+ acquisition there, they seem to have all the pieces. The last thing they need is a banking license. And if they have a banking license, what else? What can't they do is the question. They have an exchange. They have institutional exchange. They have a stable coin. They have how many $100 billion in liquidity in their XRP holdings. What's next? And to me, that's going to be the exciting thing, is when the Disney World opens. The analogy I've been given for a long time is we're in the gas station looking at the 3 20-year-old slot machines in the back right across the Nevada line, when we haven't even gotten to Vegas yet. And I think Ripple is building Vegas. I think we are about to see an exchange and interoperability across liquidity platforms unlike we've ever seen before. And if I'm wrong, I have no idea why they're buying and doing what they're doing, because then it would make absolutely no sense at all. So
I would respectfully disagree on the Ripple end.
Okay.
Again, it's one thing to collect chips. It's a whole nother thing to be able to play the actual game. And I just don't have any meaningful confidence in their team overall to turn themselves from a, propped up by a token that they created out of thin air, to turn themselves into this massive player that's, meaningful on a global scale.
If they don't, it will be a colossal, it will be a big loss because they have all the pieces to do it. And in my mind, it would be, management's fault as it pertains to not getting it done. So,
Yeah.
not to say that can't happen,
that's
but
my point. That's the point I'm making is I don't believe in their executives and management to be able to.
I agree with you. But from an acquisition and from a puzzle perspective, they got all the pieces on the board, don't they?
Oh yeah, they've got some nice pieces. It's just here's the question, right? So, and this has been somewhat of the age-old question associated with XRP. Like, you can talk about acquisitions, you can talk about partnerships, but how many users are actually doing the thing that they're talking about? Say it's 2018. XRP was working with MoneyGram or something. Who knows, right? And then it's not really. I mean, maybe they had a meeting and maybe they paid them to say that they were going to do that. And then how many users are actually using it? Well, basically nobody in that ecosystem is using that for that reason. Same thing with, Hidden Road. Like Hidden Road, great idea, great.
But I would argue that this Gemini thing is them using it in a new and better way. I think about it, Andrew. Right. They're literally lending crypto. They are a crypto bank, and they're lending it at this rate of a $75 million loan through an IPO. I mean,
So, I'm going to kind of tread a little bit lightly here because this is a show and it's on video and it'll live forever. Again, I'm just, there are certain things that I know about Gemini scale. There are other things that I know about the need for capital at certain times that it strikes me as, what do you need that for?
It's just not as impressive as I
right.
think.
And so the question then becomes in terms of stable coins, like what is the run rate in the growth of Ripple's stable coin versus a USDC, and whatever happens to be third. I don't know.
Or listen, and I honestly, back to the original topic. What about the Wyoming coin? Would you rather hold a institutionally backed stable coin or a state backed stable coin? Because if Texas issued a stable coin, I'd own some of it. By God, I'm just telling you right now, I would. There's no chance I would.
So my question is, it's good. I think it's interesting, in quotes, that Gemini and Ripple are doing something, but I also know that for Ripple and their stablecoin, Gemini is one customer, not 175,000 customers. It's one customer. Right? They're doing a deal with one customer. So at what point does it become where Ripple is doing a deal with Wells Fargo? And now you have access to 42 million customers at Wells Fargo. I mean, I don't know.
I would bet sooner rather than later, and I would bet that in the next 3 months we're going to hear 6 more companies that are using Ripple as a IPO bank. I bet.
Well, again, to that end, those are 6 customers for Ripple's IPO bank. That's not.
Yeah, but those are the first 6 customers that exist in the space. Like that's 100% market share at this point.
Yeah, but at some point that slows down and ends up stopping. Right.
Well, I'll say this is I believe, this is my personal opinion. You look at the crypto top 100 list, right? Mm-hmm. And except for Bitcoin, you can attach a personality or a group of personalities to every single one of those projects, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would say that Ripple is separating themselves from the Cardanos of the world as it pertains to true business acumen and moves on the chessboard that are meaningful to Wall Street and banks. And if they're able to continue that momentum, they will absorb some meaningful part of the market share of this first mover advantage that they all have. And I'm not saying that JP and all these other bigger ones won't come in and take the vast majority of the market share, but they could be a MindSpring. You remember MindSpring?
Yeah. The phone company.
The internet service provider company. Like they weren't AOL, but they had 1 million customers or something like that.
So again, my thesis associated with liquidity across crypto, equity, new shares, it's all funny money that's going to, influx. That's all short, and let's call it medium term, over the next 6 to 24 months. But after that, we'll then be hit with a reality that very few of these businesses that IPO'd are long-term meaningful entities. But where is Bullish going to be in 3 years? What's their business plan to somehow do a better job of acquiring customers and then charging them commissions to trade stuff that somehow was materially better than E-Trade from 5, 10, 20 years ago? Zero, nothing. Same thing with Gemini, same thing with others. These others, they'll come to market, right? There'll be a decentralized exchange that comes to market that will IPO. But again, other than the narrative of, decentralization and the lack of KYC, AML, which again, they should jump at it, because this is about the 4-year window that they'll be able to do that. What again changes the reality that is, these are entities that are not wildly innovative companies. These aren't companies that have created L1 blockchains like Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana, which are making material changes in how the entirety of finance and what have you works. These are simply storefronts for the collection of fees associated with the innovation. So the excitement and then the capital associated with that excitement is going to be very short-lived. And for what it's worth, you have to look again at Gemini. They came out last week and said that they announced the Gemini wallet, which is great. That's great. Gemini has a wallet. Is that any different than the other 1,000 wallets you can use in crypto? I don't think so.
Well, it will only be if it allows you access to things that other wallets don't allow you access to. And that's been the same in the past across crypto. Like, for example, if you wanted to trade in the meme coins, you were stuck with Solana. You had to have Solana. You had to have Solana that was a wallet that supported Solana. And I think that's going to be the continued theme. That's the only way to gatekeep these projects and force liquidity through a central point. Let's take a couple of questions. Jerry, are regulators going to allow in-kind contributions of crypto, BTC primarily into Roth IRAs? Perhaps we'll be able to do this with exchanges that are becoming more bank-like. I think absolutely. I think full integration of basically every traditional vehicle you will be able to integrate with your crypto strategy and your crypto holdings. We already have companies like Directed IRA that we're working with. A lot of our customers use our algos with Directed to trade their self-directed IRAs. And I think that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg. Andrew, what would be your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, the innovation here is the adjustment in time and timing and availability of financial services as a whole, right? So when we started this show talking about the Wyoming stablecoin thing, the reason why that is material is because instead of having to wait for periods of time, for all intents and purposes, we're moving to a space where we're obliterating intermediaries. And so by obliterating those intermediaries, we're now crunching the time down to minutes or moments, certainly within the same day, and the costs are down to nothing. In the same way, crypto is pushing financial markets to go to 24/7 type of trading. And to do 24/7 type of trading, the best way to go about that is the tokenized version of 24/7 trading that will, probably deeply expand liquidity. Those things will all happen. But the question then comes back to the likes of, Bullish or Gemini or other IPOs that are going to happen. What role do they play in that overall movement that is so compelling that there's a reason to own them long term? Now, the same could have been said of Amazon when it went public, and the only thing that it did was basically sell books. When Amazon became public, it sold books on a website as opposed to having to go to a store. But Amazon iterated and iterated and iterated and shifted and shifted and
It's just a logistics company at the end of the day. And
So, is there a world where, one of these IPOs catches lightning in a bottle? For sure. But at the same time, just like any movement, within a 2 to 4 year period, that movement has, separated the wheat from the chaff, and there's 2 or 3 companies left that are meaningful. Everybody else is kind of like, surviving, really.
I see an XRP guy has a question. So the Swift network is the best option for bank transfers. No, stable coins are. Next. Stable coins weren't invented when XRP came up with that thesis. That thesis, in my opinion, is completely dead and shattered based upon the creation of stable coins. I think stable coins issued by institutions are better than the Swift network. I think stable coins issued by institutions are better than XRP. I think state issued stable coins are even better than institution issued stable coins. And stablecoin is infinitely better than XRP in cross-border settlements. Why? Well, because it remains closer to par, period, the end. Like that, there's no way around it. There will be more fluctuations in price off with XRP than there will be something that holds par value based upon its treasury bill holdings. So it's just a better mechanism. It serves a purpose in a much better way. And so XRP has to redefine itself. And that's the whole point of all my thesis before, is I think they're doing a really good job of that. I always thought that it was going to be best served, XRP's primary use case, be best served in the private sector. And I think they're proving it. Personally, but we'll find out.
A good way to look at, say, Coinbase, and because, by the way, Ripple's trying to do as much Coinbase things as they possibly can, right? Let's try and do everything that we possibly can to build ourselves into the size and scale of what Coinbase is. Of course, they would try to do that. There's no reason not to. But I'm reminded of that video from several years ago when there's, an elementary school outside and the teacher or somebody is taking the video and each kid steps up and does the dab, right? And there's like 5 kids that do it the right way. They put a little sauce on it, something. And then there's the last kid comes up and he really doesn't know how to do it. He kind of hesitates and he goes like that. That's Ripple trying to do Coinbase stuff, right?
Well, listen,
so they're in the line. They're part of the show. It's just the execution of it. You can have all the money in the world. You can buy this.
Andrew, listen, I agree with you.
Yeah.
But so is Jerry Jones. And he still owns the Cowboys, the most profitable franchise in NFL history, and they are the worst team. I mean, if you're a Cowboys fan, God help you. You have been through misery your entire life. But Jerry Jones still, because he's got so much money he can throw at the wall, it will overcome any incompetence and any shortcomings in terms of wins. And so, Jerry's World was a part of that, right? Build it and they will come. That stadium in Arlington. But I think Ripple, I would make the case that they just have so much money and they know the space so well. Man, it's hard for me. If they do fail, they deserve it, because they shouldn't. There's a lot of ways in which they could use the liquidity pool that they have in XRP, the technology that they have in their stable coin, the partnerships that they've got across the entire globe. If you can't make a nice looking pie with that, then, God help you.
Yeah, it's all of that is true. It's just that, sometimes when you're trying to make a pie and you put a bunch of stuff in it, and then you set the oven to 9,000 degrees, it's that's probably just the outcome is not going to be awesome, even though you get the best ingredients in the world. So we'll see. I root for XRP folks. I want everybody to do well, but I've also been around long enough to kind of see trends and see where things are going. It wouldn't surprise me at all if there's one of two next moves for Ripple. The banking stuff, yeah, that'll happen now. Try to become a bank. They've never had a better opportunity to do that than now. But then on top of that, will they or will they not go public? And that's an interesting question, right? Because if they do decide to go public, they are duty bound to release their books. Like they're going to have to show everybody what's underneath the hood. Okay?
Well, to your point earlier, I wouldn't if I were them. They don't need money. They've got all the money. The only time you go public is when you want to raise a bunch of money.
And so,
Chris, they're begging you for your opinion. They're telling me and Andrew to shut up.
Well, he can't give his opinion because they're doing his lawn in the backyard in the back.
Yeah, I mean,
quick, I got a minute. I can speak.
What kind of foresight is that? I mean, we know when the show is every week, don't we?
Why don't you tell them to come at 2:00?
Is your yard so big it's an all-day ordeal? Or what's
you got it, you got it. I gotta say, it is what it is, man. Living life on the edge, right? No, I agree. I agree with these guys. I mean, I don't think it's a question of if when it comes to the the stable coins and I do believe that makes a much better bank transfer than Swift. I think the question is just timing, when, right? And now we've been really bad on timing. We've been great on ideas over the last year plus of doing this show. We've been terrible on timing. It's just happened so quickly.
Well, Chris, but let that be a lesson to everybody. Yeah. No one's good at timing. That's impossible.
Exactly.
That's the hardest part of the equation.
Exactly. I agree about all that. I think it's exactly, where we're headed. I mean, if it doesn't, I just don't see why it doesn't. Everything, we're talking about pieces and Ripple having all the pieces and to do its thing, all the pieces are out there, and they're getting put out there with government regulation and acceptance and all these things. And I don't see that it doesn't happen. But I'm more interested, honestly, at this point right now. So we've talked about Coinbase. We've talked about Ripple. These are two of the companies that have had if you've been online in crypto Twitter for the last 5 years, 8 years, these companies constantly, people just dogging them left and right, retail, right? Out there just talking about how much they hate these companies. And yet these are the companies. I mean, look at Coinbase, right? We've talked about this so many times and how they've exploded and just continue just building, become the de facto, this is the crypto king kind of thing, right? And now you have Ripple kind of coming out here saying, well, we're going to do all this other stuff in spite of not only the hatred toward XRP and Ripple in general, but also in spite of, the years-long conflict with the SEC. So is there something maybe to be learned in maybe at least with crypto when retail really, really hates it? Maybe you should take the contrarian shot to it.
And to Fibo's point, Ripple can do everything they need to do, frankly, without XRP. And that's the pivot that they're attempting to make right now. Their stable coin is. How
do you figure that? I think that's their bankroll. That is Ripple.
The point is that they're not going to be using it for anything other than a bankroll. It's not going to have any utility whatsoever other than we created this out of thin air, so it allows us to prop up our stable coin, allows us to prop up partnerships, allows us to prop up whatever.
It's a distinction without a difference, though. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, I'm giving Ripple a compliment here. My point is they're attempting to pivot away from XRP. XRP can be all things to all people to their stable coin, which does have a meaningful opportunity to make a real dent in the market. If you're Ripple and you get even a small foothold in the stablecoin space and you're able to offer, a percentage associated with interest on it, just a bit bigger than most of the others, you're going to gather assets. You're going to gather capital into that particular product.
Well, I'll give you a good example of how they could do it overnight. They open up on their website a way in which you can borrow money from them at a retail level, and they put their XRP as the collateral against the loan coupled with yours, and it's over collateralized, and they give you their stable coin as the loaned out tender. They could do that right now, and everyone would show up on that doorstep to participate. I just think they have a unique that XRP as collateral against the exchanges and the volume of trades and lending that I think is in their future. It's everything. They're a bank. They're a bank with $100 billion of their own money in the bank. That's the way I look at it.
Right, which is fantastic. But ultimately, banks and financial institutions have to gather, external capital and customers.
I agree.
To have any version of longevity and value, and that's the area where they struggle. That is the area.
But to Chris's point, if you wanted to take a contrarian view, they're hated so much, and there's so like if Coinbase or if Robinhood was announcing the things that Ripple is announcing, we'd all be clamoring to get Robinhood, to get a piece of the growth potential of Robinhood. But, we really aren't clamoring. No one talks about buying into Ripple's, shares. It's other than, John Deaton and that whole thing right now, which is all negative. There's really no conversation about that. I think that will change. I think the amount of XRP they have, the price stability that the XRP's found above $2 just lends itself to deep pockets. And these acquisitions and all the assets that are accumulating while we're kind of in this, flush period of time, I think, it's going to give them staying power through the bears. And they won't have to go back to building in the absolute silence like they were during the last administration, but they will be able to, go back to building and acquiring.
Yeah. And it is an interesting, pivot from what XRP was doing, originally, because, those of us who have been here, over the last 10 years or so, 8 years, whatever, it's always been XRP is going to replace Swift, right? Mm-hmm. And now it's all of a sudden it's this, this pivot to the stable coin, banking license, all this kind of thing. And so, I mean, I think you're right. I think it is that pivot that they're trying to get. Now, are they going to be successful or not? I think that becomes Andrew's big point, and a lot of uphill toward trying to make that happen. But as you said, though, if they do, I think that ends up people are going to be wishing that they'd gotten involved with Ripple back here when everybody was hating them.
Listen, they've even made some pretty difficult PR problems just in the past 6 to 9 months, like their involvement with the administration and then their non-involvement with the administration. I mean, they basically got booted out of all the conversations that mattered around the regulatory stuff because they just pushed too hard. And people in the know.
But then they forced their way in by creating their own stable coin. Like, it was genius. Like, I have to hand it to them. Like, you get kicked out on the basis of getting in on the XRP front. So you go, oh, well, what's everybody talking about? Stable coin legislation. Okay, well, we're in the stable coin business. I agree with you. I wouldn't bet the jockey.
Right. So it's again, I'm going to step softly here because I don't want to, cause problems where business can actually be done. But I just look at the track record of execution, and it's like somebody that wins the $400 million lottery, and 4 years later their life is just an absolute disaster. They've gotten divorced twice, and they have,
all their money,
they have $100 million left. Still got $100 million, and probably had a lot of fun, but they just haven't. They didn't have a meaningful plan. So again, I hope that there is enormous explosion of both opportunity and innovation and all of that stuff across our industry. At the same time, I think because of the way that the world works today, there will be innovation, there will be adjustments, there will be changes. But I think our expectation that just dozens and dozens and dozens of crypto companies across our universe are going to turn into these massive, huge unicorn companies just because that is just not it. That's not going to happen. It's going to be a few, and let's see who gets there.
So what do y'all think? I mean, we're going to have to ask this. I was kind of debating whether we would, but the whole sailor thing recently here. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I will tell you from a holistic perspective my thoughts. Anything that goes up really quickly goes down really quickly. That's just nature. You cannot anything that doesn't mimic that pattern is subsidized. Period. The end. So that would be my thesis.
But what do you think about him saying, okay, I'm not going to do this, and then goes and does it?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It tells me that he's unprepared, which doesn't go. I'm not surprised by it. He found Bitcoin. He self-admittedly found Bitcoin in a time of desperation based upon being way out over a limb, and he needed a way off the limb. That tells you what type of personality he is. He's somebody who doesn't mind being way out on a limb. Yeah. And when you're raising billions of dollars to trade at a multiple of the base asset that you're creating with no additional value other than the speculation of your ability to raise additional capital, that is a recipe for volatility. I mean, and I don't think he's afraid of it, is the point. I think that he wants the smoke, and it's like Ripple. Time will tell whether he's able to ride the bull for 8 seconds. And I remember I wouldn't bet against him. He is one jockey I wouldn't bet against. But it's not because he's not going to be wrong. It's because he's the type of guy that can cure his wrongs, in my opinion. Like when he makes a mistake, he goes and fixes it, and he does it pretty easily. He'd be somebody I'd bet on. So I'm not betting against him, but at the same time, it's not a rodeo I'd want to be a part of, and it's definitely not something that I would feel comfortable. I'm too risk adverse to be the captain of that ship. I mean, he's flying out there like no one's ever flown out there before.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to predict that the first 9-figure acquisition that happens in crypto is when somebody somewhere buys Tether. I think ultimately that will happen. Tether dominates the stablecoin space everywhere but the United States. They just hired Bo Hines to grow their presence in the United States.
Well, and USDT 0 is that, and it is growing exponentially. Last time I checked, there was hundreds of millions of dollars on the.
So USDT has 400 million users globally. 400 million. All right. If I'm not mistaken, I mean, the entire population of the U.S. is right around that space. So it is Tether is a behemoth. It is a behemoth that prints money. They have about a half dozen employees, and it's a in my mind, that's the kind of thing that a banking institution would find compelling.
Now, why do you say 9 figures? That sounds way low to me.
No, 9 figures is like $100 million. Oh no, you're right. My bad. I was thinking 100 billion. Is 100 billion 12?
Yeah, exactly.
9 is a million, isn't it?
Yeah, 100 billion is what you're talking about. Yeah.
That makes more sense.
Yeah, go ahead and edit that out, Chris, for me. So that was quite the terrible prediction. But
Everybody kind of knew what you wanted. I just wanted
yeah,
clarification, but I agree with you. I think it is the biggest printing press that exists in the space right now.
So what
well,
kind of multiple
again,
is it likely to go for then?
yeah, so USDC, right, is used by Coinbase and it's going to be used by in the United States. It's used a lot, but it is a wrinkle on the back of Tether globally. Again, if you were to have asked me before I looked it up, how many users does Tether have? I'd say 50 million. They have 400 million users, man. 400 million users. So that in and of itself is, the question then becomes, what is the multiple? What is the multiple based on? What, where do those conversations go?
Well, have you heard of the USTT zero and what they're doing with that? It's a USDT. There's a lot of chains that it's not interoperable with. And so they launched a version of USDT that's one-to-one paired with USDT. So it's backed by USDT that now is interoperable across multiple blockchains. And so it's going to expand their user base even more. And that USDT zero is brand spanking new. And I don't want to misquote this, so don't hold me to this. But I want to say in the first 48 hours there were $350 million in total value locked. Are
you talking about T0 or are you talking about USDT zero? What are you?
USDT zero.
Okay, let me look up what that is.
Because I've been using it. Flare is a big proponent of it because it is that's one of the ways in which they're interoperable with it. But yeah, they are taking USDT across every chain basically, and they're doing it by backing USDT zero with USDT. So it's basically, the more popular USDT zero becomes, the more popular USDT becomes, and the holdings are mirrored. So it's the same. It's a growth on both. It's growth for USDT just like it would be if it was direct.
I don't know enough about it to comment on it. So
bottom line is it just, that 400 million people that you're so impressed with.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of projects that you can't use USDT for.
Right. No, I get that. That again, from 50,000 feet, it's like USDT covers everything, but not the United States.
Yeah.
And that's why
it's not just the United States, it's blockchains. Like it's not interoperable with all of the blockchains. So like if you're on a DeFi exchange, you can't buy stuff with USDT because it doesn't work, and now it does work through this new mechanism. So it's gonna make DeFi use USDT a lot more than it is currently, which is gonna make the user base grow.
Well, that usage on chains, that's more micro. My mind just immediately goes to macro of 400 million users. Like somebody's going to find that extremely valuable at some point, and what does that look like? I mean, who decides?
Did you know about this, Tillman? What's the additional cost utilizing that chain versus using just straight up USDT?
It's not. It's cheaper.
It's cheaper.
Yeah, because the chains that they're utilizing for the transactions are cheaper. It's an improvement. That's what I mean. It's going to only make their market share grow.
I guess it's like going on Polygon. You get a USDT on there. It's like nothing, and you go on Ethereum, and it could be $15 or $20 or what, depending on what the gas fees are like at that time.
That's exactly right.
I'm going to make another prediction and an announcement. This is my most disliked version of our podcast. This episode today, I have had the least fun because all we've talked about is XRP and Ripple.
I thought you were going to say because Tillman talked for what you said the first 17
No, he did cover the first 17 minutes, which is okay. He had extra energy today. Let him run. Just let him run. Let him run.
Listen, it's my birthday today. Y'all didn't wish me birthday. So y'all don't get to comment. I get to talk on this show as much as I want today. I'm 45 years old young, and that makes me officially old enough to do things exactly the way I want to do them. So that's from
know
this
what?
day
You're
forward, that's what you're going to get out of me. You know,
You're
You
just
waited
Tillman.
45
You're
years
just
to do
Tillman
that?
being Tillman. That's what you're doing. You're
I'm
just
Tillman being Tillman. That's exactly right. That's exactly
Is that
right.
why you put CEO of Arch Public on there? Because it was your birthday today?
No, it's
Is
because
that
I
why
was
you
on
tried to-
I was on a business meeting and there were too many people on there. I had to actually label myself.
Was it the same meeting that Andrew was on and he just had basement maximalist on there? He didn't give a-
Correct. Yeah, no. Andrew, that is pretty funny though. I did not catch that until just now. Basement. Andrew's finishing out his basement and he spends all day yelling at the construction workers to stay off the grass. That's
That doesn't surprise me.
That's right. I'm both a lawn maximalist and a basement maximalist. Those are difficult to marry on a day-to-day basis. It's tough to do. But I'm pulling it off. So,
well, usually it's mostly Bitcoin here. We a little bit off today, but I think we covered some stuff that are, it's important to cover. Just
my overarching thesis remains that no matter what XRP or Ripple does, no matter what Coinbase does, no matter what Gemini, all that, there's going to be, again, this constant overwhelming amount of liquidity in the next 6 to 18, 24 months that will we've seen it every cycle, that ultimately finds its way to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And pretty reasonably smart people working at BlackRock. And so if the notes that have been given to Larry Fink that he thinks we're at 500 to 700K at some point, they've probably thought of those same type of movements of capital finding their way to Bitcoin. So yeah, I think we're in a good spot there.
Well, and I mean, we're going to be Arch Public's going to be doing a fund here soon, and we'll talk about that maybe at some future shows. But if you're a accredited investor, we think Bitcoin, and that's what we're centering our fund around, is the acquisition of Bitcoin through positive cash flowing real estate based businesses. And so, I do think that you inject Bitcoin into any model, and it makes it more attractive because there's disproportionate upside to downside. And the upside that it does possess is far superior to any traditional business that you would acquire. So you're just basically adding nothing but upside with with relative low downside risk.
That's right. Talk your book, man. That's right. Get it out there.
Hey, we haven't even started yet, but accredited investors only. It's a real.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing about that, guys. As you get that out there, so definitely let us know about it. But man, there we go. An hour here, an hour of XRP. I'll just like scratch on XRP special edition on the image here for this. And then we can maybe bring some of the XRP crowd over to listen to us talk about Bitcoin. There's the real what we're doing here. As always, everybody, we appreciate you joining in. Give these guys a follow there. Follow their company, Arch Public. You can follow it at Arch Public there on X. But you can check them out there at archpublic.com. Andrew, you can follow them at Abacus.
That's my handle. It's just Abacus.
I completely just went blank right as I started saying it.
Abacus. Yeah, I am the Abacus on Twitter. That's it. That's what I do.
It's Abacus something, guys. But hey, listen, don't worry about that. Tillman's Texas OL 61.
I'll tell you, it's Abacus Prime. It's his Transformer persona. He's a real big fan of Transformers, and that's who he would be if he was in one of the movies. Is Abacus Prime.
Abacus,
it's not that. Abacus, tell everybody what Abacus is so you can sound smart and throw out.
It's the original calculator. The Chinese, for all intents and purposes, invented math, and that was their calculator that they used. So yeah, there you go.
Andrew still uses it. That's how
good it is.
It's quick. If you know how to use it, it is quick.
What's compelling about the handle itself is I am not generally well known for my prodigious math skills. So there's a lot going on. I did mention last.
Well, it's true to form on social media. It's
Yeah.
you just take the opposite of what you get, the face value
There you
that
go.
is presented to you.
Well, I've made the claim that in the crypto space, it's possible I'm the most interesting man in the world.
Just asking you to tell us.
That could be the case. I'll gladly claim that moniker. Lots of stories to tell.
So it's
Listen,
_abacus, folks.
You just happen to find the biggest water cooler and you stand around it all day. That's the secret to the sauce right there.
That's the secret of getting ahead in business, right? It's not actually doing the work. If you do the work and you're good at the work,
Chris, stop encouraging him. This is my birthday, and all encouragement comes down.
It's all about you.
Listen, in my mind, that standing around the water cooler is the only thing in life that you can control. So that's what I do.
Well, for the rest of us, it's risk, right? It's how much you lose. That's all you can control. All right.
I control how much I make too. What are you talking about, man?
You don't know if the price is going to go where you think it's going to go. You hope it does, but if it doesn't, you got to protect your downside. All right, guys, listen. Fun times as always. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. We'll be back again next week. Same, Bitcoin time, same Bitcoin channel. I don't want to get a cease and desist letter from Batman, so we'll just leave it with that.
And remember, the only thing that you can control is how much you make in life. That's the one thing. We're going to start ending the show on that, just to rub. I love to see the cringe in your face when we interrupt you in your exit monologue, because you love doing the intros and the exits. This is my favorite part of the show, is just throwing a giant wrench in that machine.
You know what's great about being the host of the show, though?
I'm getting cut off right now. Oops, Tillman got cut off.
That's the fun part right there. Man, I love doing these shows with you guys. But hey, listen, y'all, seriously, give them a follow. Check out their company. They got a lot of great stuff going on right now. Just like me and what we do at TexasWest Capital, they're out here just to help you guys make money. That's what we're here to do, and try to make it easier and hopefully more consistent than what you've gone through in the past. So check them out. If you do jump up with them, tell them I sent you. I won't get anything, but maybe they'll change it to the Bitcoin algorithm.
I bought a book. What are you talking about? I have forked Bitcoin right in front of me. This is insane. I would get those shots. By the way, guys, thanks for all the happy birthday wishes. That was kind of you.
Fantastic. All right. Hey, listen, you guys have a great day. Trade safe out there, everybody. Don't forget, markets may continue a bit muted into Friday and Powell, but I would expect volatility out the yin yang come Friday when he kind of gets out there and starts yapping. So
that's an official technical term in trading, yin yang. So that's right. Tune into Chris's show to learn about that.
Indicator is you can find it on TradingView. Yin yang.
There you go. All right, thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you next week. Everybody else, like I said, give them a follow, check out the company, and come check us out, members.texaswestcapital.com as well. And we'd all love to, welcome you guys in. So
if the only thing that we can control is how much we lose, then how come we're all three bald? That's the question of the day. So we'll leave it at that.
I'm out of here. Y'all take care.